We had breakthrough results. Our results are consistent, which is very rare in the social and behavioral sciences. So what our results were held for Hispanics, when we just analyzed the data on them. It held for African Americans. It held for Asian and Pacific Islanders. It held for Anglos, and it held, bless their hearts, for the others. And it held in New York City. It held in Washington, D.C. It held for the people in Los Angeles, and it held in the nation. And the findings were strong. We were able to explain approximately 40% of the variance in the behaviors we were trying to model, which is extraordinarily high. If you're an engineer and you're not explaining 99% of the variance, you get very upset. If you're a social or behavioral scientist and you can explain 40% of the variance, you're joyous. It doesn't get much better than this in my discipline. Now, the key factors that motivate preparedness can be summarized in one slide. And I made you listen to all those other slides only so you'd appreciate what's in this next slide. You ready? 2 things motivate Americans, anywhere, all Americans, to prepare and mitigate. There are 2 drivers. The first is information. But it has to be of a particular kind. All kinds of information don't work. One kind does. And it's information that's received from multiple sources over multiple communication channels about what preparedness actions to take and about how those actions can cut losses in the event something happens. People need to be able to see the logic of the action. And it has to be consistent across all the messages. So let me go back to the one in the middle here, what preparedness actions to take. Imagine you're in 3rd grade. Imagine you're back where you were when I started my talk. And now imagine your baby sister and your baby brother on the other side of the living room, and one of your parents is teaching them how to put on their shoes. It probably is going something like this. No, no, no. That shoe goes on the other foot. Here, you try it. Now tie the laces. Good. That's it. Did Mom explain the statistical probability of frostbite and amputation of little toes if you wore no shoes when you get a heavy snowfall? Didn't, did she? She focused on what? The behavior. If you want to impact human behavior, what there is to communicate to people is behavior. You saw examples of it today here. Before, when you came back from your break and the MC came up here, the MC said, we're going to start in 5 minutes. Wrong thing to say if you're an MC. You need to tell people what to do. It should have said something like this: take your seats now. Because you're dealing with people who learned how to put on their shoes in a particular way. They're just a little older now. The second factor that came out of the modeling, much more important than the first factor. Wrap your mind around that. Both of these are important, but this is the strongest factor, is cues. And I hate to admit it, but I am. For over 100 years, most American universities have had psychology and sociology departments who have had generation on top of generation of faculty, professors, and graduate students studying human behavior. Over 100 years. Only those of us who are no longer after federal grants and contracts are willing to admit, that's me. We have human beings figured out. We really do understand the human animal. And the second factor is an example of that. It's cues, seeing other people take action. And a brilliant social psychologist 100 years ago described this basic scientific tenet as monkey see, monkey do. Now, these 2 factors drive mitigation and preparedness behavior in 2 ways. First, directly. Information of those two kinds, hearing it, if it's of that certain profile, and seeing others do it, motivates action, but it also drives it indirectly by first and also impacting the knowledge in people's heads, the perceived effectiveness of the actions they're being asked to take, and milling around or talking about it with other human beings. People, by and large, don't behave until they talk about it with other human beings. It's called milling. And it looks like this. So, if you want to know how to make Americans prepare any kind of preparedness or mitigate any kind of mitigation, this is the key to how it's done. Information received and information observed, directly and indirectly affecting action through what people know, the perceived effectiveness of the actions, and then them talking about it with somebody else. So, if any of you have done anything to mitigate your flood losses or prepare for flood disasters, the next time you have a dinner party at your house, show your guests. And that'll do more than any federal program we can come up with. Unless you want to subsidize martinis and letting people who have mitigated and prepare have dinner parties. These information, I don't think that would go over, but it would have an effect. These information to action relationships can be used to increase public preparedness and mitigation, since public information is pliable and can be shaped by policies and programs. And the relationship is linear. That means the more information you shove in the system, the more public actions you get out. The less information you put in, the less actions you get out. So if any of you run or have programs in your agencies that have anything to do with public information, you are the source of what the public is and isn't doing. Now, that's not making you wrong. I hope that empowers you to know that you can change the country. Other things just don't matter much. Some other factors aren't statistically significantly related to readiness. Some other factors are statistically related to readiness, but either their effects aren't real and go away when other things are controlled, or their effects have so little predictive value that they should be ignored. Bless you. The things that matter most include two shockers: perceived risk and event probabilities. So let me say that again. Look me in the eye and I'll say it slow. Two things don't matter: the public's perceived risk and the public understanding event probabilities. This was grim news to the seismologists in California. In fact, that sort of information may, we suspect, have a tendency to turn the public off and tune you out. So, if you want to ask me, which you haven't, but I bet you will, so I'll just answer it, how might you present probabilities to the public? Should I say 1 in 10 or 10%? My answer is don't. If what you're interested in is getting the public to mitigate and prepare, you could do it for other reasons, just don't expect those outcomes. Now, converting all of these findings into an evidence-based toolkit for practitioners. I took great joy in doing this.